Greetings, citizens of Earth. You are barking a happy tune with my pal Smurf of Smurf and the Magic Tones on 5280 Geek.
Live from the Figure Studios, it is Weekend Geek Updates. Smurf here, and guess what, folks? We got somebody in-house, and it's not just your average run-of-the-mill guest. No. Adam from Pop Culture Classroom has finally been able to work us into his busy schedule. Con season is on top of us. We are in the heat of October.
The heat of 60-degree days outside in flannel shirts.
I know, it was like cold this morning, and then now it's like balmy. It's like, holy crap.
Just Denver being Denver.
Yes, it is. Before we get into it, our sponsor is Susie Q's, the maker of fine jewelry, who is doing the con tour right now. She will be out in Vegas this weekend, and in fact, she will be at it's not the Pop Culture Classroom Con anymore. It is Fan Expo, and we're here to talk with Adam about the changes, everything that's gone on with Pop Culture Classroom, geekdom in general, and the con season that we thought was defunct, that slips us a Mickey, and suddenly, here we go. We're going to get in a mini-con just for the sake of it. Before all of that, though, I'll let Adam say something because I've just been doing all the talking.
Yeah, well, just wanted to say I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to kind of chat today. And
of course.
Catch up with what we've been doing at Pop Culture Classroom. Got a lot of exciting things in the mix I'm glad we get a chance to talk about and get to kind of dish a bit about all the con stuff that's been going on as well. And so thanks again for having me.
Of course. Yeah. And it's funny because Adam and I were talking about this before we started, and I'm like, it's very rare in the comic book world, in the con world in Colorado, that I don't know somebody. Mm-hmm. And I've never met Adam, and I almost feel that's a fault on my part. I mean, I know everybody else over there, Tone, Chris Angel, of course, Bruce McIntosh, McIntyre. Yeah, McIntosh. I was right the first time. And I know everybody over there, but I don't think our paths have ever crossed because you have been involved in a very fundamental foundation for what DCC was. And this was for the kids. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because you tell me where you were, and I was like, oh, yeah, I had no reason to go over there because you're dealing with the children.
Yes.
So your first year of the con for Denver Comic Con, you were there.
I was not there for the first year.
Okay.
I joined in about year 3.
Okay.
So, my history with the organization started about 2013, 2014. I actually came in as an outreach teacher. So I was out in schools and community centers teaching how to read and write through comics to kids who were in, underserved populations, at-risk groups. And so, luckily enough, as I kind of came into the organization, our education department was growing.
Okay.
And as a lot of folks probably know, or who may be listening or maybe not know, is that, Denver Comic Con, Denver Pop Culture Con was founded on this idea of a fundraising entity.
Correct.
Was built to raise funds to help art, literacy, self-expression, critical thinking, all sorts of learning skills and objectives with kids and adults. So that was kind of my priority for the last 5 or 6 years with the organization, is really bringing those to the surface in the community and finding ways to engage kids in all sorts of things around pop culture.
So that was the mantra. It was to teach literacy to children, and knowing from personal experience. Mm-hmm. My vocabulary and my learning reading level jumped light years because of comics. Right. I mean, I remember reading like Spider-Man and going through, and they never played down. They always they would put stuff in there specifically for the curious, or okay, what does this mean? I mean, there were times I would go to my parents and I'm like, what does this word mean? And they would just we're going to introduce you to the dictionary. And I mean, that's basically how it went. So I can understand how easy and approachable, especially when you're dealing with comics, a visual medium. Mm-hmm. Did you find this as easy and as approachable with children and kids, or how did that? Because it's an entirely different generation now. It's the digital age.
Right. Well, I mean, like what we talk about a lot at Pop Culture Classroom is, students are really born and raised in this multimedia generation right now. So you're having an iPod or an iPad or a Android tablet in your hand, at 1, 2, 3 years old. So this sort of combination of text and image, this is what students are growing up with. And so just trying to leverage that to engage them in other topics, whether it be history, science, technology, math. And so kind of thinking of literacy, like building up their literacy around anything from space travel to, the science of physics to, actual context clues around reading. How do I, what can comics give me that can help me understand this word? And one thing we talk about a lot is for students, there's so many layers of comics, and like you're mentioning, you've got the images, the text, the captions, facial expressions, body language, all of that being pulled together to help a student understand what's happening or, have that kind of unique learning experience in and out of the classroom. And so you hear stories from all across the world, and especially, for those folks who've been reading comics about, this is the way they learn to read. This is what inspired them to be creative. This is what led them down the path of becoming what they are today. And so we really try and just ramp that up and leverage kind of those comics and board games and cosplay and all the pieces of pop culture to engage students and really give them a way to express themselves and connect with their teachers and parents and each other in a really unique way.
So do you think, or I want to phrase this question appropriately because I find it absolutely fascinating that you guys tackle so many genres when it comes to pop culture. Because, I mean, you're not limited to just comics. Like you said, you the board games, which are crucial because that deals with so many things on adding strategy, working with others, working on that. And then you have the cosplay element, which is more of the creative and the visual. And is there one group that is easier to work with than another group?
You mean a group of like
cosplayers versus the style of student. So you have your cosplayer group, your board game group, because I mean you're doing more than just introducing this to them. You're showing them how to do it.
I mean it's really kind of we call it pop culture I say it in a positive way, the lowest common denominator of connection. So everybody has.
Everybody's a nerd. Everybody's a geek.
Everybody's a geek about something: cooking, space travel. For those folks who are over 21, it might be alcohol. I play, for example, sports, and so I have some sports geekdom built into me.
Absolutely.
So, really, it's meeting kids where they're at and showing them that the things that they are really excited about and think are cool outside the classroom actually have these these really exciting ways to teach them that next level of whether it be reading, writing, critical thinking, self-expression, all those things that you mentioned. So we don't really see that one group is attracted to one thing, but what pop culture allows is that you can blend cosplay or comics or board games into kind of anything that's happening in any classroom. And so these kids are so excited just to have the chance to see something that they really care about or is meaningful to them at home or with their friends. Suddenly that's in the classroom. It's building trust between them and their teacher. It's connecting them to their peers. And that just gives them that extra opportunity to learn those new things or engage with folks that they may otherwise not engage with. And so it's just a really cool opportunity to, again, bring those folks together and give them a new way to think about how they can connect and other things like professions, like careers that they can have.
And a lot of it, a seamstress. I mean, I think of probably the most successful cosplayer, Yaya Han.
Yeah.
Who, no doubt about it, the most skilled cosplayer. And I know people will at me on that one. But, I mean, the woman has her own fabric line.
Yep.
I mean, and it's all from crafts.
And I think that's what a lot of students are really raised in this standardized testing world where everything is very one track. Where you're a STEM kid, you go through, you're going to be an engineer or business major later in life, and
here's your trade, take them up.
And we try.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not the mop, but we need everybody.
Everybody is equal. Yes.
Everyone has a chance to sort of be part of this exciting world of professions. But that being said, showing them and demystifying some of the things, I think about a movie like Shang-Chi, which I don't know if anyone's seen. I'm sure a lot of viewers have seen it, and the levels of complexity around the costume design in there, or the settings and the CGI,
the culture, the history, all of that,
the diverse representation, and a lot of students think that or a comic just kind of fully emerges out of someone's head, you know, like James Cameron in Avatar. It just exists one day. And, you know, the idea is we're trying...
he was a janitor. He was a janitor before he was discovered. So, yes.
Just maybe drawing, like, Avatar characters on a whiteboard someone discovered in one day. Good Will Hunting style.
Goodwill, yeah. How about those... never mind. I'm not going to go with that joke. Never mind. We'll go on. Go on.
No, it's okay. But I was going to say, you know, trying to show them that all of these people who are working towards that common goal and collaborating together and cooperating to build this really unique, meaningful thing that makes a cultural impact.
Right.
And to turn their brains from consuming to creating.
Right.
And participating in the process of creation is just such a great way to inspire them to take on, like, you know, I want to learn how to be a better writer. I want to learn how to be a better reader. I want to learn how to be a better artist, because I see that I can shape some of this cultural experience that I am currently, like, really enjoying and wanting to be a part of. And so that is how you kind of get people to start to transform their, you know, you start to see how transformations happen in communities and classrooms around pop culture, because these students become motivated and engaged, and they see that all of these things that come together and feel kind of magical on the page or on the screen are being brought together by people just like them, working in an office or a classroom just like theirs, and they suddenly see a path or an opportunity for them to become like those creators themselves.
Well, and you being a sports guy, you can understand the analogy of, you know, nothing gets you in the game like playing.
Yeah.
So, and I, when I was a trainer and all of that, I really did find a lot of joy and excitement from getting someone engaged, and you see that epiphany, that moment that it hits them, and they're all like, "Oh, yeah, I get it," you know. And and there's nothing quite like. I mean, that is a euphoric high that you are not going to lose.
Yeah. And I think the second level of that is really what Pop Culture Classroom does, is we try and give the educators, like, the tools and the training and the opportunities to bring those things into the classroom so they can do those things with the students. And so kind of like the coach, right? You know, having those opportunities, the models, you know, the curricular units or the lesson plans, whatever it might be, that help them, you know, maybe you're not familiar with the full Marvel Comics Gold, Silver, and Bronze Age, but, you know,
you can appreciate it's still the same.
You can appreciate, especially when you see the way that it connects with students and engages them and gets them thinking beyond just that one topic in the classroom, but I want to write this full comic about this, or I want to build a board game, or I want to just be part of this world and be more engaged with people like me.
Now, how big are your class sizes? Because, I mean, are you guys still over by Mile High Stadium?
Yes, we're down at 5th and Federal. That's where our offices are. So we have a really wide range of things that we do. So, you know, our workshops can be for kids, and it can be 5 to 10 kids in a room, up to 200 kids, and we even do things for adults. So, you know,
even think of us.
I know, some professional development, you know, helping people kind of figure out what it is about pop culture that works and how to use it, and then just kind of showing them that there are these really low-hanging fruits that you can kind of grab onto and bring into the classroom, that even if you don't know comics, you don't know board games, you've got stuff out there that is really easily attainable and really easy to kind of bring into that conversation with your students, even if they aren't really super psyched about board games or really interested in comics. You know, then you kind of turn their brains onto that, and, you know, as we all know, and, you know, once you're on it, you don't really stop typically.
You don't. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because from the comic book side, you always have those people. I never know where to start. Mm-hmm. I don't want to pick it up and be lost. And it's really not a question of being lost. You realize that the issues are so self-contained, but the overarching story usually gets explained through the story that they're telling. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of engaging that way. And board games, Axis and Allies all day, baby. I mean, get me an Axis game, and I will play until they are crushed.
Yeah, and like all the little, you know, all the things that go into that game, like the history of it, and the context of like fascism, and you can really bring all those things to the surface, or you can just have fun, play a game that makes you feel like you're part of that community, or you're
I just like building boats. I mean,
Yeah.
I just want a fleet of destroyers, going into the harbor.
Yeah, I mean, those board games, I mean, the really cool thing is that context, and that's the same thing around any comic. The context and the intention by which they're built, if you can really pull that apart and start looking at each individual
The dichotomy
piece,
of it all. Yeah.
even the art, how is the art bringing the game into a better experience for folks, and who's doing that art, and what could you do to improve it, or what would you want to see as some additions to this thing. And so we try and bring that into the conversation with students and educators as well, because we're trying to get them to really think critically about how these were designed and then what impact they're supposed to be having. So then you can begin to think, well, I can do this.
Right.
This isn't so hard. You just have to start at step one.
So is there a more difficult age group? Because, I mean, at some point, even coming from, back in my day, you had the jocks and the nerds and the geeks, and, I don't have time for that kind of stuff. Is there a more difficult age range than another, or do you find everyone pretty receptive overall now, given the environment and what Marvel's done for the last decade?
I think everyone is receptive to some element of pop culture. I think as you get older, sometimes the jadedness comes in, or, you get very opinionated, as we all know.
Nerd.
Yeah. We've all seen fan communities turn and cannibalize on themselves.
They have. They are vicious.
They are vicious. But I would say it's all about just meeting students where they're at. So, for a younger class, they might like a really simple comic or something like Calvin and Hobbes.
Right.
But as you move up into costume design with middle school and high schoolers, or maybe you're building a game with them that's more complex, that's more like a Settlers of Catan versus Candyland.
Right.
So the cool thing about, again, pop culture, whether it be, that costume design, games, comics, video games even, is there's usually a level of engagement for every, these folks who are designing these things are very smart. They want to create these students as lifelong fans, lifelong consumers, advocates for what they're doing. And so they make sure that there's always something
kind of
for
a
that
buy-in
next
for
level.
it, right?
Yeah. And so we just, we spend a lot of time thinking about what are the best resources and things to bring into a middle or a high school or an elementary school classroom, or what's something really easy, what's an easy pickup comic or an easy pickup game that a teacher can bring into their spaces. And they don't need to know the entire history of how Settlers of Catan was built and all the different mods and versions of it, but it's just about they know how this game can work and what it's going to do to teach them about, cooperation all the way to let's talk about feudalism. Let's talk about, indentured servitude back in the 1800s or something like that.
Well, all I saw when I saw Settlers of Catan was hey, it's the Oregon Trail in paper form.
Yep.
I remember dying on that game more times than making it home. So I get it.
And that's the thing. We think about how much we learned about traveling across the country in, olden times through the Oregon Country Trail and all the hunting and what it took to survive, and all of that is sort of built into our, for our generation, our collective consciousness. But you don't really sometimes think about it until you start to pick apart the different elements.
Right.
And so I even think about the games like Number Crunchers or really those cool games,
yeah,
a way to just teach math in a way that, I remember having a ton of fun playing Number Munchers, but and I also know all the prime numbers up till 100 plus because I just memorized them from Number Munchers for so long.
Well, and you had the Nobe, so you could be fast on the game, and
Right.
that was, like playing gin. I remember playing gin with kids that were just like slapjacks,
Slapjacks.
wham! I'm like, damn, I lost a finger on that one.
Yeah.
Crap.
So you've got social emotional learning, you've got leadership skills being built for collaborating on a game, or you've just got art and literacy skills that are being built. So like you said, the difficult populations, I would say as students get older, they tend to be more opinionated. They tend to have more specifics of what their geekdom or nerddom is. They're less of that omnivore. They're very specific. So we try and find things that are kind of all encompassing. So for a high school classroom where maybe we have a bunch of different students come from different backgrounds, there might be an opportunity to build a comic character, but also to design a costume around that character, but also to write a story around that character, and then even create that character into a gameplay element. What are their powers? What are their bonuses? How many points do they have to use for this thing? And so
what's their dexterity? Oh, damn, I got hit.
it all feeds into itself, and it's this really cool melting pot. And like I said, there is very few students who come to the table or come into their classroom not having at least that, base level understanding of what a comic board game or what it is, and often what their favorites are and what they'd like to do, and you just kind of you build off that foundation.
So, and you brought this up, and one of the things that like really stood out to me in the years past for PCC, was creating your own comic book. And you guys printed it. I mean, you guys saw it from concept to story to completion. Which was, I mean, that's a spectacular. There are like artists today that can't even get that done, and you're taking a whole classroom on that trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the idea is typically a 6-panel comic or something along those lines that tells a story that addresses a problem in the world. And students can choose a community problem, a national problem, a world problem, and sometimes a really non-intimidating, welcoming way to invite students in that conversation is to say, what would your superhero do to address this? Or what would your superhero team do? And then you can start to build on that. Okay, well, why was the X-Men created? What were they speaking to at the time? What was a problem that they were addressing? What was Superman created for? I mean, you look at the first image, one of the first images of Superman is him punching out a Nazi. You look at X-Men coming out when it did around, LGBTQ+, or, discrimination issues that were coming through at the time. And so, you start to show them that this isn't just a fun comic reading experience, that there was a message behind this narrative. There was something that the authors or creators were trying to convey. And then they have that power too. And when you look at X-Men now, you look at how much impact and how much it has transformed some of the ways we see our world or even see the differences between us. And that's a cultural impact that cannot be understated, and it's something that, I'm sure the comic book writers at the time weren't necessarily thinking about as like, this is the 30-year down the road future we'd like to see, but you show them that is where all this started, and it starts to begin to motivate that kind of thinking process.
Well, and it's funny because when you bring up X-Men, when Stanley conceived them and was tackling, equality and racial issues, and the funny thing is that for all of the voice and everything that we've given to that, it's still, I mean, it's better, but it still hasn't changed. It's still there, and in fact, it's compounded even more now that like you said, we have the LGBTQ plus community now that identifies with that kind of equality and fighting for those levels of recognition, and I think it is a great way to bring about social awareness and teaching children that it's okay to be accepting of everything. Education is where understanding begins. And I think that comics is a great way to bring that across, because there's so many stories, there's so many venues to relay that poignant, issue, and we can only change the world through education and through reaching the young. As they come up, they can be like, well, this isn't how it's supposed to be, guys. Stan Lee had it right. We don't see color. This is a person. This is a human. This is okay. So he's got a third eye, but you know what? He can see better. Let's give that guy a third sunglass. Let's get that guy taken care of.
I mean, and you think about Stan Lee, or the creators of these comics. They were very smart. They were very intentional about, like, we're going to create this space to have these conversations, but also this is going to be something that we're going to fan about, we're going to be excited about. So when people bring that into, when it's on a bookshelf at home or something, maybe they're not realizing that that's kind of some of the messages or the intention, but that opens up the opportunity to have those conversations with those students, where maybe if you hand them an essay about like discrimination in the workplace circa, blah, 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 that's a tougher ask for a student to understand, critically think about, and discuss that. Whereas when we can talk about, what are we seeing in X-Men that represents what kind of is happening in your lives or the world today, suddenly, eyes open, and they realize that, this is a chance for them to really speak to something very personal to them, but also something that maybe is affecting the world around them, the world that they're seeing in the classroom or maybe in home, or something they're really concerned about.
And it's a great way to give them a voice. How do the teachers? Because I mean, it's obvious you need someone that's kind of focused in on this. I mean, you just can't go and pick a 3-year grad student and say, here's the latest Captain America. Good luck.
Well, I mean, our job at Pop Culture Classroom is really to build the bridge. So sometimes, as we say, like, someone like an educator will be halfway across the bridge. They'll be a fan already,
right.
or they'll be excited about comics, board games, or cosplay. But sometimes they'll be on the other side, on the other shore, and we have to kind of build the bridge all the way across. So that's why we have like educational comics that we publish that are about historical topics or figures from throughout history who maybe aren't in the traditional textbooks. We do curriculum development. We have 2 curricular units that teach students how to build their own games and their own comics from scratch, like you mentioned.
Right.
And then we have, resources for educators, so everything from blog posts to lesson plans to teaching guides that are there just to help them have that platform to bring these into classrooms, because often it's just that first step of bringing it into the conversation with students that builds that trust. It shows students like, oh, this person's seeing where I'm at and what I'm interested in, and now they want to like actually find a way to make that part of this experience. And that's like a really transformational thing that we try and help make happen in classrooms, both from a kind of a indirect standpoint by handing off these things to folks, but
empowering
also
them.
We have a crew of teachers. We have an education department that is entirely motivated by this idea of how do we elevate this discussion around pop culture, and how do we bring into these classrooms ourselves these experiences. Example being like last year we went into a youth services center, so an incarcerated youth center, and we taught a comic book course there that tried to engage students in this idea of building or reading stories that have different perspectives. So everything from Mouse to different books.
That's a deep read.
Yeah, so these are like high school level students, but thinking like, how are comics different than what you've maybe seen in the past, something unique, and then what is your story that you want to tell, and I think a lot of the times giving them that sense of control over their own story, the idea, like we said, turning from consumers to creators, consumers to advocates for the form, is a way to like really get these students thinking about how they can also become those people who are like stepping out and making change wherever it might be.
Because you guys have been doing a lot of different events across town. I know you work very closely with Hall of Justice, and Jonathan and his team over there are absolutely spectacular. And Jonathan is a great guy. We've had him on the. I mean, we've known Jonathan for years, since he was just doing shows before the store and all of that. So, do you do a lot of group with other organizations and other stores, or how does that work when you guys are looking at something like, we need to be part of this, and we want to partner with these guys?
Yeah, we do a lot of different work around like community events. So we run. So the one that you mentioned, we ran what was called Pop Up, which is like pop up, right? So a little play on the pop culture platform. Toots our own horn. We are so creative people. We figured it out. But the idea being like we ran a event down at Parker Arts and Cultural Center, or Parker Arts and Culture Entertainment Center, I should say. And we basically did this entire event that was just highlighting local organizations who were doing things around pop culture, Wings Over the Rockies, Hall of Justice Comics, people like the Colorado Ballet even, who were doing superhero dance moves. So learning how to dance like a superhero. So again, there's these opportunities to connect. How does
Captain America dance? Does Cap dance?
Well, I think the idea of like the dance battle that they have in one of the movies, and like leveraging that kind of thing.
Oh, the dance off in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly. So thinking, how do we do those dance moves? And then
Ronan the Accuser won. Everyone is saying that Ronan won that fight. I'm just saying. I mean, unfortunately for Star-Lord, but just saying. I
mean, he won the dance battle. I think he lost the war, though, right?
He did. Yeah. He just got served up on the end of that.
Yeah. But we try and bring together these organizations to really, again, show what pop culture can do from all different perspectives. So we run our own events. And then, for example, we also involve ourselves with events that are happening all throughout the community. So partnering with like Canvas Credit Union at their Heroes Fest a couple weekends ago, which is recognizing and celebrating like first responders. So we did a workshop where students were creating a character that was a first responder comic character, and they had to write a little story about that character. So
that's cool.
What does a first responder do? What would their superpowers be? What tools do they need to accomplish their goals? What is their mission? What sidekicks might they have? And so you start to tease apart all these different things that go into being a first responder, and suddenly students are enjoying the process and also learning a lot about like how maybe they could become a first responder, or just like, you know, understanding what it means to be in that role a little bit better.
That's a big role. I mean, being a first responder is it's a heavy role. I mean, that's a big, important role. They're there even before the firefighters and the cops show up. Right. First responders are crucial to a lot of immediate medical needs. So
especially the last year and a half.
Yeah, hats off to the first responders. I've had friends and I've done ride-alongs, and it's eye-opening when you finally like get in there and expose children to that. It's great, because what Red and I and a lot of everyone on 5280 Geek has always pursued is not talking down to children.
Right.
We explain it to them. We treat them. They're smaller adults. We little adults, but we do treat them like they're adults. We just explain it to a point where they get it.
Right.
And that is, I think, the more important thing. Don't talk down to them. Explain it to them.
Yeah, and comics and like graphic novels and board games offer that really nice and easy inroad. It's very welcoming, inviting. You know, if I hand someone a 2-paragraph article, you know, maybe not 2-paragraph. That's a very short article.
I was going to say that's like a text note.
Yeah, 2-page article about like you know, for example, I think about like Mouse again. If I hand them, here's a chapter of a textbook about World War II, or I hand them Mouse and I say, you know, which one of those is more exciting to you? Which one really, you know, and they both contain the same level of complexity, subject matter, you know, really touching on like all the atrocities, but also some of the hope that came out of those experiences.
A lot of hope, jeez.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you know, what often ends up being is that reading prose text or reading a textbook can feel like work. It's just a triggering thing for a lot of students. This is standardized testing world. So reading and analyzing a 5-paragraph essay can sometimes not be the most engaging or inviting thing, but you hand them a colorful, exciting, character-driven comic or graphic novel, or you put a board game piece in their hand and you say, we're going to learn by playing here. We're going to learn about worldwide health by playing Pandemic.
Well, and it can be intimidating, especially when you're dealing with subject matter, because I remember friends that were with me and they were intimidated by, well, I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't so much like, well, I know how to, why don't, you know, it was more of like, well, why don't, what's intimidating about it, you know? Mm-hmm. And you try to discern that, and you try to do the breakthrough. And I think that's the bridge that you guys are doing so crucial work in helping the community and kids, because that there's two things in this world I always want to try to help: kids and pets. Yep. I mean, those are they're defenseless, they're impressionable, and they basically emulate what they're around and what they learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that giving them, like when you think of even about like comic, and you think about the fully formed people that kind of show up in comics, or a movie or a film or television piece or a video game, you know,
right? These
are characters that show leadership skills, that show something that we can model after, versus, you know, I can hand a student again a short chapter about George Washington, or, you know, even a more modern character that might show up in you know, in another way in a comic, or, you know, something like that. But, you know, what they're seeing on the page, or what they're experiencing in the movie or the film or TV, or what they're playing through as a kind of participate in the board game will motivate them and give them more to kind of cling to as terms of what they want to be in the future. So it's this really like kind of, I like to call it like the closed circle, where they're actually like feeding off of that and building, and then it gets them excited to read again, or to play again, or to watch that movie again, because they've made that connection with that character or that topic. Yeah.
So if I can ask, you don't have to discern this, mm-hmm. But is there like one success story or one student that you don't have to give names or anything, mm-hmm. but this is the situation, that you're like, holy moly, that you're like, this is, I can't believe, or like the biggest success that you personally witnessed? Because I know you've worked a lot with multiple groups of teens, and I know after a while, just like us, your teachers see so many people come through.
Yeah.
But is there one that just stands out to you, and you're like, you know, this will always touch me, or always have an impact?
I actually have two, but I'll talk through the first one, and then we'll see if we have time for this.
We got all the time in the world. I run the show.
Okay,
I mean,
there you go.
PJ is fine. He's propped up in the corner.
Okay, we're good. So the first one is, I was actually teaching at a school out in Sun Valley, which is one of the more underserved at-risk populations, really like just directly south of the Mile High Stadium.
Right.
And we were working with the student group of, I think, 4th to 6th graders. And we had final comic show and tell. And each of the students was asked to, again, address a problem they see in their community through their comic. And one of the students had a comic about their finding a gun. And seeing gun violence in, like, out their window. And
like it's every morning you're waking up to it, right?
And this was clearly a real thing that had happened to them, because we started the conversation, and we had asked them just to talk about anything they felt comfortable with, but he had created a character to address this issue, and the character was like a superhero character that kind of knew what to do, and would go out and break up the fights. And so it was this really transformational experience for me. It was one of my first experiences teaching comics to this group of students, and actually connecting with them over these comics. And we sat down and we had a 30-minute conversation about what do you do, what can we do as students to help change our community, to address gun violence, to address violence. And I mean, I'm having these conversations with a 5th grader and having deep, intellectually stimulating conversations about their worries about the world they're seeing out the window and what they would do if they had the chance to do it. And suddenly you can just see the light bulbs going off of, like, I do have the power to change this. I can be the superhero in my community. I can make these things happen. And that was like 5 years ago. I don't know where that student is now, but I hope that they carry that knowledge kind of forward and kind of saw themselves as more of a participant, more of an active member of the community, because I think, again, it all comes down to that sense of feeling often out of control, or that you're at the short end of the stick and you're not able to change things. And superheroes are, for what
they always know what to do.
They always want to change things. There's always a crisis, a conflict, and there's always something to kind of be, not necessarily be against, but to position yourself kind of as the you're going to fix this problem or this issue.
Have there been a lot of delicate situations? I mean, I guess I didn't really think about it, but I mean, given the neighborhoods and the at-risk people and children that you're working with, have there been a lot of, like, close calls or situations that you're like, wow, that escalated quickly?
I wouldn't say there's been close calls. Like, I think we try and provide a really safe space to have these conversations. It's just what the students bring to the table in terms of what's on their mind. Because, in that same class, for example, we had a student writing about the main character was a stalk of broccoli, and their superhero was
chopping broccoli.
This young girl had some issues around her weight, and she had some concerns around her weight, and so
body images.
She created a superhero to sort of battle against the candy demons, because they were the ones that she that she was always attracted to, or that maybe she knew were not necessarily the things that she wanted to see out there, or the things that she wanted to be involved in, and she didn't have a chance to really, like, speak into what that fight might look like. And so she had this amazing comic that was, the broccoli stalk Avenger.
Wow. See, and that is so freaking clever. Yeah. Wow.
And that's something that comes up a lot in these classes and these programs is, whether it's, them tackling a difficult subject in their community, or, creating a board game on the periodic table. It's something they may be having some trouble with, that they can kind of have this unique, inclusive, welcoming space to tackle, to deal with,
that they're trying to work through.
Unravel. So what I find is that actually it de-escalates some of those issues, because it separates them from the personal part of it by giving them a persona, an alter ego to battle. And also, or maybe it's the alter ego as a board game character, or maybe it's a comic character, or maybe it's someone they're designing a costume around. But it always kind of links back to that central core idea of most pop culture, which is trying to solve a problem that affects more than just the me. Most of, like, Avengers movies, it's not like, well, Tony Stark's going to lose his fortune. We got to go fight Ultron to get his bankroll back. It's about
that's a current Batman title.
Yeah,
right?
That's
story
that's
right
the
now.
Batman for
Batman lost his superpower. What was it? Money.
Yeah. He's probably got some accounts in the Cayman.
He's got
somewhere.
There's a Cayman Islands
There's
account.
The Cayman Islands
don't kid yourself. There's always a
There's
sister
always
cat.
something, yeah.
So how often do the classes run, and what is like the length or the duration of those classes?
Oh man, we're running classes like all week, every week.
Oh, wow.
So basically, we might have upwards of 4 to 5 classes going on in a week. They can last from a 2-hour one-time experience where maybe we go in a library and we do a quick, quick board game kind of play along, and hey, here's some ideas for how to create your own, to 13 to 16 week courses that lead students from here's what a comic is, to how to build your own, to let's actually have these reviewed and discussed by professional artists, so we can give you some feedback and maybe help you build a better script, or help you understand maybe some of the pieces how you can improve your art. So they kind of run the full gamut, and they also cover like every aspect of pop culture, so costume design, so an example of one would be before the Denver Pop Culture Con in 2019, we brought in students for a summer camp where they created a character, built a costume around a character, and then performed that character at the con. So, and the character had to be unique. It had to be something entirely designed by them, and some of the stuff that we got out of that. So it's that nice flow through of like pop culture has that next level amp up always available to folks. And so we kind of do everything under the sun, and we work with students from especially 8 to about 18.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're doing stuff all year round, including summer camps. We're working in schools for outreach workshops, doing things at Denver Public Schools, Jeffco, Douglas County, all over the Front Range. And then we do professional development trainings at sites and schools as well.
Right.
And obviously bringing people around for community events and kind of giving them a chance to just be a community together and celebrate their favorite fandom and learn a little bit along the way.
So I know everyone's probably been anxiously waiting for this question. And what is the status of the con? Because we know Denver Comic Con, Pulp Culture Classroom Con is no longer. So it went through the renaming because of the settlement with San Diego Comic Con. That's the reason for the rebranding. And then now it is under the control or under the reins of the Fan Expo people, which run multiple cons across the country. What's the situation, or what's the relationship now between the con and the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, just to kind of backtrack us to March of 2020, right?
Yeah, which is let's face it, the dark ages.
The dark ages. So, as a lot of listeners and folks probably know, we had to cancel the 2020 con.
Which was painful. Everybody was just, you have a con in your backyard, to hear it canceled, that's defeating.
Yeah, it was tough, and we were so close. We were in July of that year, so
you were this close, and to have everything just like if people were unaware at home, you guys moved the date. You were even trying to like, okay, we can push it out, we can buy some time, and even buying all the time in the world, it came down to, it's not going to happen.
Health and safety. Got to keep people healthy and safe. But so we had to cancel the 2020 con. We moved it, then we canceled it. Canceled the 2021 con. And so, as probably any event organizer, will know listening to this, it takes a lot of money just to get the event started.
Correct.
So we were kind of looking down we were looking down to a future where we were going to kind of have to rebuild from year one kind of status.
Oh, so like the bricks, like all the way to the start. Wow.
Yeah, because you think about all the refunds, all of the exhibitors and attendees that we wanted to make sure we were honoring, their commitment to the event and the organization by making sure that we weren't, telling them we'll see you in 2 years, we will keep your money until then kind of thing.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that were upset because there are cons across the country that were not refunding. They're like, no, we're just going to roll you over. And they're like, no, I want my money back.
Yeah, and so we obviously from a financial standpoint, we were thinking about what does the future look like for this event? And how do we continue to have this community-focused, locally focused event that really brings all these folks together, the fans, in a really big, meaningful way, and also gives that kind of economic support for the artists, the vendors, the city, the hotels. So, how do we keep this size and level of event in the community while still maintaining the educational and the local focus?
Right.
And, for us, when we were looking at that, we were really concerned that, we might have to be fighting against a con that might come in that would be,
to name that con, it's Wizard World Con. I mean, there's no mistaking it. I already knew Wizard was on the gate. They're pounding to get into Colorado because it is such a viable collector's market.
Yeah, and instead of us starting from scratch and then kind of all of the cons trying to come in and cannibalizing each other, we thought the best opportunity we can bring back to this community is by forming a collaborative partnership with Fan Expo HQ, which is the largest Comic-Con producer in North America and now the world. I don't know if you know, they bought out Wizard World.
They did buy out. Philly is one of the big cons that they were after, and I have worked with FanX in the past and Wizard World, so I'm curious to see what they come up with.
Yeah, and so we pretty much are collaborating together on Fan Expo Denver. So essentially, they are looking to manage the day-to-day, the kind of logistics, the operational pieces of the event, all of those kind of big financial kind of pieces, as well as just kind of the, securing of all the different folks who are part of the event.
Right.
And Pop Culture Classroom will be serving as the featured charity.
Nice.
So, we are involved behind the scenes, kind of helping put together the event. We're helping with some of the educational programming. So looking at bringing back our Educators Day program, which is
very nice.
Free day for educators to come, professional development all day long, and then of course, cool stuff to be participating in on the show floor as well. So kind of a con experience built around a professional development day. We've got Experience the Comics, which is a program where we brought in school groups. So we're bringing in about 200 youth and their chaperones to get a free day of experiencing the con, as we've done in years past.
Very nice.
And then we'll be continuing to run our Kids Lab program. And that's basically a big area on the show floor that's dedicated specifically to giving the con experience to those younger fans, to the families, to the folks who maybe don't see themselves necessarily as having a space at the event. And this is their place to be engaged with activities, maybe meet a celebrity or two on the Kids Lab stage, maybe get to do some drawing, some board game play. We've got some really cool programs that we're designing right now for that October weekend, the Halloween weekend event.
That's looming out there.
That I can not share right now, but they will be very cool. We've got a
spoilers.
live action role playing experience that we're building into the lab this year.
That's cool.
In 2019, we had a family friendly all ages puzzle room, which was an escape room designed for kids. And so we're working really closely with them to make sure that, again, not only is all of that educational programming going to be part of the event and a really central focus, but that we're providing them the insights and the connections and the kind of local network of folks who helped build the event, who have been involved and supported it and advocated for it for so long, and also looked at it as that really big yearly source of support for their art, their company, whatever they might be doing, their book that they have coming out next year. And so we've so far been able to, create what we feel is a really great, really unique event that still hits on the same things that we've seen at Denver Pop Culture Con and Denver Comic Con past, but also, because we are the featured charity and because we are able to focus a little more so on the educational pieces, because some of the other pieces have sort of fallen to Fan Expo, we can create even a better experience for those families and educators and young fans at the event. And then the funding that we raise through the event from Pop Culture Classroom's end goes directly back into the programs and community things that we're doing year round. And so we wanted to really maintain that local impact and that local focus. And then of course, our main number one thing is how do we take this big event and realize and use it to realize programming that inspires, engages, and connects kids and families and educators together.
Well, I mean, if anything, it sounds like Fan Expo has definitely opened up the door for you to guys up your game, because even like some of the preferences that you're kind of telling me and alluding at, I would love to spend a day just playing D&D with kids. I mean, I thought the Zenith was having Adam West read a book to kids back in the day, but I mean, you guys have expanded so much more on just having them come and design a paper plate. You guys had like a whole interactive along the wall. I mean, it was probably, to put it in con breakdown, it was probably at least 10 booths. You know,
it was about
just
9,000 square feet
Yeah.
on the show floor, which is, again, we've got, this year it's a little smaller, but we have a dedicated show floor space, and we want to create an opportunity for everyone to have a place they see themselves at the event.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of, I don't mean to cast aspersions at any other event, but I think that often you see at events, the kids zone is downstairs and then tucked away in a corner. Or
if they even have a kids zone. I mean, I've been to cons that don't have kids zones, and you're like, wow, this is horrible.
Yeah, and educators too. Often it's at the library down the road, or maybe it's off-site, or maybe it's 2 days before the event itself. And so everyone has that element of pop culture that they are excited and engaged with, and like we said, everybody's nerdy about something.
Exactly.
So how do you create a welcoming and inviting space in the convention center or in the show itself that brings those folks together into conversation with, the educator with the artist, or the artist with the young teen creator, or the teenager with the teenager who never have met before, would never otherwise be friends, but man, they both love Iron Man, and suddenly they're in their cosplay for Iron Man, and they're just going to spend the day together, like having a good time. And
I think that's an 80s movie. I think that preference is an 80s film. So if people want to get involved with this, where do they go? How do they volunteer? Are you taking volunteers?
Absolutely. So we have, as I mentioned, a bunch of programming at the event that we are 100% looking for volunteers for. We have a great volunteer crew, but we're always looking for more help. And that would be like through our nonprofit. So Fan Expo has their own crew that they have managing the event, who are kind of running the day-to-day aspects of the show. And then we have kind of specifically our kid-friendly, educator-friendly programming that we need support with. So popcultureclassroom.org/volunteering is kind of the best place to go. And you can sign up, you can look at the opportunities.
That's just me. My TARDIS is moving.
You can sign up. You can see what the opportunities are both at Fan Expo and year round. And
Okay.
we're always looking for folks because, again, we're already thinking about how do we take what we're doing at the Fan Expo event, the funds we're raising, and putting it back into next year in terms of programming, opportunities, events. And so we always need help with that. And really, we need advocates. We need people who are sharing that information to their school or their local teacher or their local library and saying, this is a great program you should bring into your space, because, again, we've seen the way in which our curricular units or our teacher-led programs or our professional development can help transform a space or the conversations being had around topics and subjects. And there's some really cool things that we'd love to get some volunteers involved in, and we encourage everyone to check us out and apply if you're interested.
Because one of the images, and we had a hearty belly laugh, because I'm also, you may not be aware, but I know the fans probably listening, I am also part of the Colorado Ghostbusters.
Yes.
And you swiped a picture of a group picture from one of the events that we did. So you've got Bixby, Aaron, Red, and Devin all posed out for the Colorado Ghostbusters, and when that showed up in my news feed, I laughed because I was like, I know right where that picture was taken, and we were so excited to be involved. So the Colorado Ghostbusters did share the link. So if you can't find the link to be a volunteer, go to the Colorado Ghostbusters page. The link is up there to get more volunteers. But we're just like, they see you guys, be able to like, yeah, we can pull this because you guys have so much backing from the community, and so many people have been involved and have like a huge love of this con. And I know everyone's pulling to get, more to you guys. And I'm happy that FanX is partnered up with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and they're bringing a lot of great opportunities to the table as well. We're really excited about where the collaboration is heading. And I think that, it's going to make for a bigger, better, more exciting show, and a bigger, better, more exciting local and educational focus. So it's kind of like as we've been saying for the last year, it's like we got to have the tide lift all boats. And, instead of having someone come in maybe from out of state with running a con that pulls money from the local community, doesn't have that educational focus, this is an opportunity where we get to see the event continue to reinvest and have that economic impact and make meaningful inroads into the local community, so that people still feel that connection and that community. Because, as I said, it takes a lot of money to put together an event, and after 18 months of kind of a very difficult 18 months, I should say.
An uncertain 18 months, because we don't even know what tomorrow brings, but here we are today, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, and we just feel really lucky. You know, there's been many organizations like ours, many events like ours that have just ceased to exist or shrunk down significantly, and that, in the end of the day, you know, really impacts those local folks, the community that has relied on those funds or the economic impact for so long. And so we're just really excited that we have the opportunity to continue kind of having the same level of event and the same level of impact through this relationship. So, and, you know, to just throw the kudos at Fan Expo. They've been so great to work with, and I think they're going to blow some people's minds at the show this year. I think if you haven't bought tickets yet, I'd highly recommend it.
I would highly recommend it.
And every ticket you buy helps us as a nonprofit to really feed back into that community support, all the programs we've been talking about.
Which is encouraging, because that was like the one big fear. I know I was speaking with other con-goers in town. They're like, well, you know, Fan Expo, why would they? I mean, they are very bottom line driven. They're very profit. We don't do this for free. And like you said, they're the largest across the country for a reason. So to see them contribute to the community and to do all of that for pop culture is tremendous. That's absolutely worth the dime. So we're October 1.
October 1.
What do you got coming? I mean, are we going to get more guest announcements? Are you guys making appearances at other locations? What's the plan before the con kickoff on the 29th?
We are all at Pop Culture Classroom sequestered in planning mode. You know, we've had since about July to get all of our ducks in a row, which is
still not enough time.
13 months is enough time. Everything else is not enough time. But that being said, you know, we're really building on a great plan for the event, some great programs. We've got them all up on our website about what we'll be doing at the event. We actually still have applications open for Educators Day.
Oh, okay.
But we're filled up on programs like Experience the Comics. We have groups coming in. You know, we've got a really robust Kids Lab experience with some local and even national exhibitors, kind of or partners, I should say, kind of featured in that lab. You know, folks even like, you know, I can't 100% confirm, but Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and you know, like Apex Movement Gym, which does parkour-related activities, and then of course, just tons of cool stuff happening on the Kids Lab stage, including like some special guests and appearances. So we're getting all of our ducks in a row for that, and then you know, the hope is that we're kind of about a week out from the event, kind of in full sprint mode, ready to go. But nothing really coming up soon from us in terms of like outside of Fan Expo Denver. But we are doing, as I mentioned, like workshops in schools and things all semester long. So we've got programs happening all the time there. So we never really stop. It's just right now we're just in that focus mode on the events. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So Adam, where do they need to go if, you know, they're new to the community, if they're new to the podcast, if they're new to listening to you? Where do they go to stalk you to find out about Pop Culture Classroom, about upcoming events, and how they can contribute and help and lend a helping hand to you guys?
Yeah, so popcultureclassroom.org is our website. That's always the best place to kind of find out what we're doing. If we have a new educational comic that we publish, if we've got a new teaching guide out that we work with publishers from across the country. You know, we just finished up, with Abrams doing a teaching guide on Fire Story, which is about a one man's experience going through the 2018 California wildfires.
Oh, wow.
Graphic memoir types. But we've always got new resources on there, new blog posts, new things that are coming out. And then, of course, if you're interested in supporting us, the donates information is there. And then, number one thing is they're always looking for volunteers and folks who can just spread the word and advocate for us and help us get into new spaces and really get in front of some new kids, because we think that the things that we do have this really amazing opportunity to, as I have been saying all the last 45 minutes, is just transform these classrooms, really change some of those conversations and help kind of kids and adults get more engaged across the spectrum of different things that, they might be interested in, or maybe they don't even know they're interested in.
They don't even know. Yeah. Again, to know you like the game, you got to play.
Yeah. So that's popcultureclassroom.org. And then, for Fan Expo Denver, I believe the website is fanexpohq.com/Denver. It might be Fan Expo Denver, but if you just Google search Fan Expo Denver, I'm very certain you will find us.
You're going to hit it pretty hard.
Yeah, and they've got new guests, new folks that they're always announcing every week. And I don't know exactly who, but I do know that, they've got some pretty cool folks lined up. So I'm excited to see who they have announced in the next month.
Who do you want to see? Who would you like to see? Because now you're kind of you can kind of, nudge. This is who I'd like to see. Who is that character?
I'm a Marvel Cinematic Universe guy, so
okay.
I would take any of the main Avengers. But I've actually always been really interested in the creators behind some of those massive properties. So if I could, pluck folks out of thin air and bring them to the event, it would be people like the J.J. Abrams or the James Cameron or the Kevin Feige. Like
I would love to chew Kevin Feige's ear because I would have hours of conversation with that man.
But I selfishly want to spend like 30 to an hour in a room just being like, so what about this? Where's this stage 4 thing heading, right? Or J.J. Abrams just talking about like what happened with Lost? Or
what's the deal with lens flares?
Yeah.
I mean, really, come on, tell me, help me out here.
Yeah, and so like just and then the even like the Rousseau brothers or folks like that. My personal, as someone who kind of came up through the literature and the creative writing world for a lot of my educational stuff, I'm always really excited and interested in the people who are kind of setting up all the dominoes and making everything happen, and also creating kind of these massive stories that have such a huge impact, and it's such a hard thing to combine all of these different elements together to make a meaningful story that, you think about Shang-Chi and you think about not only them combining all the Chinese cultural elements and the costume design and the folklore, but like having to overcome like the, to put it directly, like racist beginnings of some of those characters.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of characters they couldn't bring in from the comic because literally and now it is a very racist term that you don't want to use, and you will get rightfully so accosted because it is ignorant, and you don't say those things.
Right. And the people who are reading 30 years of comics and condensing it down to a story that engages modern audiences is something that I've always been interested in, and also something that I feel like from a standpoint of our programming, we always try and make sure that's something we prioritize for kids because we want them to hear as best we can or learn as best they can about that this doesn't just happen overnight.
No.
These are
You got to put in the time.
Yeah, I mean, like Shang-Chi, I know has been tried to be made like 4 times.
A couple times.
And so it's just a matter of I think for me, like wanting to kind of hear from the people who are kind of beating the drum and keeping things moving and helping make these monumental cultural impact, like pop culture media elements. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I don't know. I've met and seen almost everybody.
Ooh, humble brag.
I mean, I'm just excited that we have a con, and if I get a chance to talk to anybody, I'm fine with. I don't know. I've had such a good interaction. One year for Denver Comic Con, I got to sit down and interview the 2 doctors.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of a very cool thing. I'd love to sit down and talk to Tenet if I get the chance. I spoke to Eccleston out in Chicago, and he is just absolutely just so genuine and so fun. I would love to sit down and just have a moment with him. But I mean, I'm gracious for any time that I could have with anybody. Yeah. So whether their status is here or here, just to sit and get their perspective and like this, just chat. Yeah. But I totally would J.J. Abrams or Feige. Oh my God, him and I could just see doing hours on comic book lore to see who knows more. I mean, that's what I want. Feige, you're coming on the show. We're comparing Marvel knowledge. Yeah, he'll probably kick my ass. So.
I think if there's one like character that's been in the Marvel movies, but also I think Paul Rudd. I mean,
I would love to talk to Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I just think I was watching a YouTube clip of him yesterday on Conan where he does the recurring bit with the clip that he does with. I won't ruin it.
Here,
look it up.
I'm going to show you. Here's a clip of my latest film. Yeah. He suckers him in every single time, and it's great.
Search Paul Rudd Conan if you want a really great 10 to 15 minute just laugh along video. But just like all that cool stuff that he does and all the different properties he's been in, going all the way back to some of my favorite movies from the 90s, the 2000s, up till now.
Well, and it's funny because if two people that I find that would probably be the most fun and kind of engaging, Paul Rudd and Jeremy Renner. I mean, Jeremy Renner, I think, would be absolutely great to just kind of sit down and just have a little talk with, you know. Yeah. And I would, again, I'm not picky.
He dropped a music video last year.
He did. Yeah. I mean, the man is just kind of fun.
He's all over the place.
He did Tag, which I think is like one of the best, you know, comedies based on a true story, and the camaraderie that's behind that. So I don't know. I guess it just depends on the con and what my opportunities are. I mean, we got
take what you can get.
Exactly. we've got the Grand Moff coming in for pop culture, and I thought his best role was Do the Right Thing, him starring opposite Danny Aiello, and I mean that was when I first discovered him. So I mean, I would love to sit and talk to him about that film, and working with Spike Lee and all of the turmoil and everything that film created. But, you know, his time on Breaking Bad. And he's just such a cool cat that I just want to sit and just bullshit with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could just, like, the list could go on.
Yeah, the list is long.
The list could go on. You're Breaking Bad, I was like, oh, Bryan Cranston, obviously.
Cranston, yeah, like, Cranston's going to sit down and... I mean, Cranston would if you could afford him. Yeah. But the man is in such demand. I know he would be very genuine, but at the same point, I wouldn't want to suffer that price tag.
Yeah, I mean, I always think about like how much their time is worth per hour, and I'm like, oh, like they wouldn't.
If I could only charge those rates.
Yeah, where do I save up this money? Like, you know, yeah.
Adam, I guess that kind of brings us to an end. Is there anything else you would like to put out into the Geekverse before I let you back out into the real world?
The real world.
Whatever that may be.
Whatever that may be. No, I would just say, again, check out our website. We love if anybody's willing to volunteer, spread the word about what we're doing. We've got some really cool things coming up for 2022, including some more community events all around the Front Range, kind of, you know, engaging different organizations and folks in pop culture, so keep an eye out for that. And we're hoping to relaunch next year what we call Colorful History. So it's a series of educational comics we publish that focus on different events, figures, places throughout Colorado and U.S. history. So
Very nice.
Kind of engage with kids. And then we're trying to really continue pushing that along and even creating like teaching guides around, you know, not only graphic novels, but video games, board games, and things like that. So our focus is, again, direct impact in the community, but also trying to provide those resources that people can just have at any time and use how they want. And so keep an eye on our website. It's the best way to kind of stay tuned, and also sign up for our newsletter. And then if you really want to stay engaged, we'll keep you updated for sure as a volunteer.
Nice. Well, there you go. Get in on the inside, volunteer, help out the home team, help out Adam.
Bring us to your classroom, to your school, to your library. We've got tons of cool stuff we can do, and we're always ready to make it work for whatever population we're working with.
And you never know. Maybe I'll even show up just to help the festivities along.
There we go.
No, not really. So that, I guess, covers it for this week. As always, give us a like, give us a share. Please go over to Pop Culture Classroom and show them the same generosity. But in the meantime, run fast, laugh hard, and always be kind. Good night.
Thank you.